Level 1, Limbo. The first level isn't really considered hell. Basically, it's Earth. However, you cannot die. The sole punishment is the awareness of their present condition therein will be the same for eternity. Dante himself defined it as the place where, instead of screaming, there is sighing. It's where infants who have not been baptized go, and good individuals who were born prior to the time of Christ reside, such as Plato and Socrates. Some people actually went from the limbo level to heaven at the moment of Jesus' death on the cross, since he came down to limbo and brought them with him. Nevertheless, they are primarily characters from the Old Testament, like Adam, Abel, Noah, Moses, etc. Julius Caesar is also in limbo since Dante was a huge admirer. But you were born prior to Christ. My apologies. Minos. Prior to the initial real level of hell, there is Minos, which is a figure from ancient Greek mythology that judges where people need to go in the underworld based on their actions. Whenever someone comes into contact with him, they can't help but tell the truth. Level 2, Lust. This is where people who've committed sexual sins go, and it's the most used temptation by the devils to bring people into hell. Here, one can encounter strong winds, unusual like a hurricane, with people who get pushed back and forth constantly without the opportunity of getting some rest. In the Divine Comedy by Dante, there is a principle called contrapasso, which means that the punishments of souls must be carried out through a process that either resembles or contrasts with the sin itself. For this precise reason, people who lived blown about by the passions of love now have to be blown about by actual winds. Certain renowned individuals can be located within this stratum, such as Dido, Paris, and Cleopatra, who isn't in hell solely due to her lustful nature, but also because she was a foe of Rome. Level 3, Gluttony. There is a constant pouring of a mixture of rain, sleet, snow, and hail, with people constantly being pelted with ice. Here is where we also discover Cerberus, the three-headed hound from Greek mythology, the one who races around and tears people apart. But since they can't die, they either just regenerate and stay in a loop of suffering for eternity, or just lay there forever. This penalty is in accordance with the principle of contrapasso, where those who always ate are now being consumed. The majority of individuals here are feigning death to evade Cerberus. When it tried to go for Dante, Virgil, who is guiding him, threw dirt in its three mouths, distracting it. It is at this stage that we acquire knowledge. On the day of reckoning, everyone's soul will be reunited with their body and be in a state of perfection. But while perfection sounds good in heaven, in hell, it signifies absolute agony. Level 4, Greed. Upon their initial arrival at Level 4, they see a sea of people constantly running into each other like waves and beating each other with bags of money. In between them, Dante sees some bald people who were commonly friars, so he asks Virgil if they're members of the church. Virgil says that half of them are indeed members of the church, and the other half are just people who fought to hoard wealth on earth. Now they have to literally fight for nothing, just like they battled for worthless earthly riches. We also can't find recognizable celebrities are nowhere to be found here because their faces have been so disfigured after centuries of conflict that they are unrecognizable. Level 5, Wrath. This level isn't to be mistaken for violence, as it's just for people who are mean and angry all the time. A vast expanse of mud with people constantly trying to push each other down to emerge victorious, and there are bubbles coming up from the mud, which are actually coming from people below, are screaming and crying. The sullen can be encountered on this level, and they are situated deep below the sea, endlessly bubbling their lamentations. This level has the river Styx, which is also includes with people, and Dante and Virgil take Phlegus boat, who is a Greek mythology character that acts as the boatman that takes souls from the fifth layer to the lower circles of hell. While they're getting nearer to their destination, Dante sees a red light, which is the city of Dis. The city of Dis encompasses the 6th through the 9th circles of hell and is characterized by its strong walls and fiery landscape. So from now on, each level will take place in the city of Dis. When they get to the gates, some fallen angels appear and tell Dante that he isn't dead yet and he isn't supposed to go there, so they lock the gates, even though Virgil tried to explain that they're on a mission from God. Moreover, the three Furies come out from the pillars of the gate, drenched in blood and serpents, and begin yelling for Medusa, forcing Dante and Virgil to cover their eyes to not become stones and stay there forever. As things are getting bad, real heavenly angel descends from heaven with a huge roar and starts walking across the river Styx. As he's walking, the sea of souls gets pushed to the sides to make room for it. The angel then arrives at the gates, touches them, and they instantly open, revealing the fallen angels hiding cowardly behind them. The angel informs them that Dante and Virgil are indeed on a divine mission, and if they were to hinder their journey, they would suffer greatly. Level 6. Heresy. This is the first layer where people are actively sinning against someone else. So from here on, they experience active torture and suffering instead of just misery. As they reach level 6 where the heretics dwell, they see tombs cut out of rock, laid along each other, where people are constantly lying down, being stoked with flames. There are fallen angel guards who ensure everybody is lying down and properly suffering. We can also find King Frederick II here, since he was in the opposite faction of Dante's during a war between the Pope and the Emperor. Level 7. Violence. The 7th level is split into 3 parts: the outer ring for violence injury towards others, the middle ring for violence self-lury, and the inner ring for violence against God. In the first part, the outer ring, we find the Phlegerhin River made of boiling blood, where people are forced to burn for eternity by the centaur who guard it and make sure no one gets out. Alexander the Great is here, since he killed a lot of people, and we learn that the river gets deeper the closer the souls are to the middle, with some people being entirely submerged and some being able to take their heads out and breathe. In the second ring, the middle ring, there's a dark forest filled with dead trees and harpies, which are a combination of human and bird flying back and forth. Dante hears lots of screaming, but he can't see anybody, so Virgil tells him to pull off a branch from a tree. When he does so, blood comes out of the tree, and it starts screaming. That's because the trees are actually people who committed suicide, and since they wanted to get rid of their bodies, now they have to spend eternity in something that is not their body. These tree people grow fruits, which are part of their bodies that get eaten by the harpies, causing them great pain. When Judgment Day comes, these trees will have their lifeless bodies hanging from them, making them remember what they have done forever. In the third part, the inner ring, there's a sandpit full of naked people who are screaming the most out of every level. Yet, that's because there are pieces of fire falling down on the sand, making it scorching hot. Also, if one of the souls gets tired of walking on boiling sand for eternity and lays down, they would have to stay in that position for 100 years, exposing more of their bodies to the burns. In this layer, we can find Capanius, who's a giant that's laying there and laughing while saying it isn't that bad. He's doing this because he doesn't want to let the Roman god Jove, who killed him, know that he's suffering. We can also see people who stare at purses all the time, and they're the usurers. Those who gave out loans with high interest rates because they defy God's law that each effort gives a result, since they made no efforts and got lots of results. Level 8. Fraud. Level 8 is divided into 10 trenches, called bolges, where people who made different kinds of frauds are punished. The first bolja is for those who betrayed love. For example, we can find a guy who sold his sister to a lustful man. They are forced to run from one end of the trench to the other because devils whip them if they move too slowly. The second bolja is for the deceptive speakers, those who lied to get what they wanted, and it consists of a giant pitfall of poop. The idea is that those who behest now are full of BS, always fighting and trying to push each other down. In the third bolja, we can find the simoniacs, those who sold sacred goods like holy sacraments or passes to get one's familiar out of purgatory for cash. Dante put them in here because back then it was a huge problem in the church with leaders selling pardons. The ground and bottom of the bolja are on fire, and there are random hot coals that shooting up with flames. The only way to avoid them is to get into holes in the ground, but since they only cover the top part of the body, the feet stay up and get burned. Here we can find Pope Nicholas III, who Dante thought started the trend of getting paid for pardons. The Pope says to Dante that whenever the next Pope comes to take his place, he needs to dig deeper underground to leave room for the successor. The fourth bolja is for sorcerers and seers, basically witches, and the only punishment they receive is that their heads are twisted backwards, so they have to walk backwards for the rest of eternity. In the fifth bolja, the berators are found, which are people who exchange money for political favors and corruption. They are in a pot of boiling tar, with devils keeping them in with rods. The sixth bolja, for the hypocrites, is composed of people with beautiful robes from the outside, but ugly on the inside and really heavy. The hypocrites are forced to walk with them on for eternity. Hypocrites are forced to walk with them on for eternity, and there also a man crucified in the middle of the bulia. Caiaphas, the high priest who advised the Pharisees to crucify Jesus, others in the guide of hypocrites must step on him with their heavy robes. In the seventh bolja, thieves are punished, and there are giant lizard snake things that have stingers that turn people into ash. People run with some sort of snake handcuffs behind their back, being stung into ash and regenerating in an eternal loop. In the 8th Bulja, we can find evil leaders and counselors, and we can see a long area with little fires that look like fireflies, while in actuality, there are souls underneath them who burn all the time, since everyone who led others to death with treachery and leadership is here. We can find Ulysses to sense back then they thought that the world had a limit, and they thought that Ulysses went on to the sea with his crew until the end of the world, where they fell off and died. In the 9th Bulja, we can find the sowers of discord, and there's a sea of carnage that looks like it's from every war in history, with every possible part of the body torn to pieces. It's for people who purposefully cause trouble, and there are demons picking people up, ripping them to shreds, and throwing them into that sea where they lay alive forever, feeling the other body parts being thrown onto them. For some reason, Dante also put Prophet Muhammad from Islam here too. In the 10th and last Bulja, we can find the liars and falsifiers in a pitch-black scenario. Dante had to cover his ears from the shrieking that he heard, and it's because there's a constant pestilence of illnesses far beyond the ones on Earth, such as people covered in giant scabs that look like fish scales that itch all over their body that once scratched away bleed and grow back. Level 9. Treachery. The deepest level is a frozen lake, divided into 4 regions, based on who the souls betrayed, kindred and family, country, guests and friends, and God. The heads of the sinners pop out from the frozen lake, and they stay frozen from the neck downwards forever, with their own tears becoming frozen. The middle of this lake is the center of hell itself. Dante encounters Friar Alberga, whom he knew personally, and who was still alive. So when he asked him how it's possible that he's there while alive, Alberga told him that if someone commits a really, really bad sin, his soul goes straight into hell in the 9th level, and the body gets possessed by a demon. Which is how demon possessions happen. Alberga himself invited a friend over and murdered him, in this way, betraying his trust. As they go towards the center, Dante feels a wind, and once he gets close enough, Virgil explains that it's the wind caused by Lucifer's wings. Lucifer is described as massive with 3 faces, the one on the right being a dark blackish color, the one in the middle being deep blood red, and the one on the left being a bright burning yellow. From each of these faces, blood and tears pour, running down his body and creating a sort of river. There are just 4 people in this bottom pit of hell. The first is Lucifer, and then there are the 2 on either side of the heads, which are Brutus and Cassius, the 2 members of the Senate who conspired against Caesar. They are positioned on the left and right sides of Lucifer's heads, with their top half hanging out, and they're constantly chewed with Lucifer extending claws upward and scratching them forever. In the middle head of Lucifer is the most punished man ever, Judas Iscariot, the apostle who betrayed Jesus. Facing towards the throat of Lucifer, Dante says he can see his spine and bones as all of his skin has been stripped away. Lucifer got there in the center of the earth because when he was cast out of heaven, the lands moved to not touch him, and he got stuck there, shooting a hole through earth.